I am delighted today to welcome Lloyd Skinner to the show. Lloyd is the CEO of Greyfly.AI, and he's responsible for leading the company's board and strategic initiatives. With over 30 years of experience in program management, he has successfully overseen full lifecycle projects worth hundreds of millions of pounds, including major change and transformation efforts. During his time as a program manager at BBC, he managed thousands of people and chaired both project level and senior program executive board meetings, with his programs being considered best in their class. He's an evangelist who advocates the potential to revolutionise project management across multiple industries using AI. And he's a seasoned speaker, delivering UK and global talks to events organised by APM, British Computer Society, and PMI, and GAPMO, which is a new one for me. And in addition to his role at Greyfly, he serves as a non-executive director at companies with turnover of over 15 million, where he chairs board meetings and helps guide the company's success. He has a Master of Science from London School of Economics and particularly interested in AI, as we'll probably get, and how it can improve project success. Lloyd, thank you for coming on the show. Welcome.
Thank you, Nigel. Thank you for inviting me, and thank you for introducing me. I'd almost forgotten about my whole bio then, but that's brilliant. Thank you for that.
It's interesting when you write something and then you hear someone else reading it.
I know.
Uh, it, it kind of makes you think, oh, hang on, did I
Yeah, I'm
say
like,
that?
who is this guy?
Yeah, it's not me, is what I find most of the time with some of the things I've written. So tell us, obviously there's a lot there, but tell us a little bit more about you. Let the listeners know where you're from, a little bit more background.
Yeah, of course. So I was brought up in Buckinghamshire, actually. So my hometown was a place called Aylesbury, a good old grammar school. But I was kind of lucky. I went off to university, and once I did a degree in business studies. But then I went on and I did a master's at LSE, London School of Economics, in information systems, and bizarrely enough, that's part of the backstory of where I've landed up. Obviously both of us have some grey beards here, Nige, so we're of a certain age. And
Yeah.
I actually went on my 25 years post masters anniversary. So I did a masters in early 90s. And actually I got bumped into my business partner, my co-founder, and we started talking about the technologies that we'd learned in the early 90s hadn't at that stage been applied to project management. So this sort of coincided with a good moment in my life, and that's really where Greyfly was born from. Talking about how you could apply technologies like AI or big data to the world of projects, as it were. So yeah, university graduate, work wise, I spent lots and lots of years consulting. I was sadly excited by critical paths and PERT charts, and started working as project planner, program planner, PMO or project support office before they were even called PMO. Got a bit blurred between supporting projects, delivering projects. Ended up working at the BBC, as you mentioned. They're running some big projects, and then latterly into Greyfly. So
Brilliant. So it's obviously AI is a hot topic, and we met last year at the PMI Synergy event where you were on stage, and I thought I've got to get him on the show to chat about this because I think one of the things and I talked, and I'm sure you know Ricardo Vargas from the PMI and numerous other different things that I had him on the show in 2019, I think it was. It might have been 2020, and he was talking then about AI and how you could use AI for project and building big data stores to improve information between AI and things like that. And that back then it was kind of like that was in pre-chat GPT, and it was kind of like, oh yeah, that sounds really good. I bet that's
yeah,
hard. That's a big thing. It's a long way down the line before it becomes something that could be actually used. And here we are, 6 years later,
yeah,
and 4 or 5 years later, sorry, and the um, the project management, the whole industry, every industry, from design, from movies to game, every industry is now had this little wake up call and been impacted on these tools, and the way that we work are changing because of these tools on a day to day basis. I'll give you a great example. I spotted the other day was had a guest like yourself whose bio was written in the first person.
Yeah,
So I thought, hang on a minute. Oh, I need to change that 5 minutes before. Oh, pulled out Copilot,
yeah, yeah,
copied it in there. Put this in with the name X, and boom, rewritten
yeah. Fantastic.
like that. And whilst and I don't use it that often from that point of view. I tend to go right. I want a nice pretty picture for something. Or I want this or some odd thing that I want to do. And it's the actual productivity benefits that are available with it are starting to seep into my usage of things. And I think a couple of years back, when early on, this guy called Tom's Planner, um, where they created a tool where I just went in there and show me a project for delivering an ERP, and that's what does the prompt. Suddenly you've got a plan, and then you expand that bit, then you've got a detailed plan. And I kind of sat there as a PM or a planner like you were.
Yeah,
You can spend 20 minutes and you've got a straw man to go into a workshop with, rather
yeah,
than spending 2 days getting the straw man to then be able to critique. So you
yeah,
can see that productivity. So that's me talk a little bit of my thinking of where I've gone and seen so far. And I'm sure you've dug deeper into this. But
yeah.
what was it that made you go, hang on, AI is the thing? And then was it just before that chat GPT? Did you have that much prescience, or was it just after? What was that? How did that conversation with your colleague start?
Yeah, so you mentioned Ricardo. Ricardo and I are good friends. So weirdly enough, we did a panel this week where we had 700 people on it. So it's still a very popular subject, this AI and
Yeah.
project management. I actually started my journeys almost 7 years ago now. That moment that I had at that postmasters, that 25-year anniversary, that was the spark. And it dovetailed with my sort of personal life. So I just moved to Bristol. I was planning on taking quite a major PD type role, but life changed at the last moment, and I pulled out of that and found myself with a bit of free time on my hands. So I was organising for BCS, the British Computer Society, talks in Bristol. So I had this 25-year anniversary. I had these talks I was organising where, they were sort of a wake-up call for me about my love for technology. That it's, gone into drifted away, project planning, project management, etc. That I was, more at the overall level, so I wasn't getting into to the detail, if you like. So you had these both moments that made me start thinking about, whoa, hold on a minute, could you start applying technology to project management? And my business partner, she worked for the big four consultancy companies in an assurance and audit vein. And we got chatting about the assurance cycle, if you like. So if I just very quickly describe that at the highest level, once you've determined what project or what scope you're assuring, what do? You go and gather up a load of information. You interview people, you try and make head of tail of that, you pull it together, you then compare to what good looks like, you then write a report for the particular customer or client, you might then update it and you present it. What we realized was very early that cycle, if I changed the language to say, well, what did we do? We ingested data, both written data and interview data. We used that to train the models and compare to benchmarks. And then we presented a set of insights. So before you know it, the typical AI machine learning type cycle really, really lends itself to assurance.
Yeah.
And that's what was really, behind our gems of ideas around the application of AI in project management. Just go back to what you said earlier. This was way before Gen AI appeared, So 2022, November 22, it seems to be the milestone where Chat GPT was launched to the public. So we were playing in this more machine learning world rather than the Gen AI world. Obviously, these days we play in both areas, but yeah, that's how we started getting into AI, and sitting underneath that, the why question was my experiences that unfortunately, and again, I know this is well trodden grounds, but when you compare to the original plan and budgets, projects don't tend to deliver to time and plan. So, the gem of the idea was, could we use machine learning to accelerate assurance, which will then improve project success? So yeah, that's how it all started, Nigel.
Brilliant. It sounds like it's interesting because obviously before AI, cloud was the big thing, wasn't it? And cloud was suddenly there, and still is, but I mean that was suddenly came boom, that's out there. And I remember going through the training on that I did on Azure and on AWS, and in both cases there was a machine learning element or service that was in there
Yeah.
already. And as you say, that a capability for certain things was there, but not in the way that sort of ChatGPT unlocked the potential of it more than anything, and then by unlocking that potential, then also unlock the demand, and therefore that's what's
Yeah.
created what is uh, an exploding industry is probably a reasonable
Yeah.
thing to.
I think the point about ChatGPT is that it became so accessible. So it's almost a B2C product. Yeah,
Yeah,
that suddenly, you can jump on it, and I'll park to one side security and hallucinations and all of that type of stuff for 1 second. But you as a user, suddenly, I don't know, I remember going around with friends at Christmas that year and him saying, "Oh, I've just written a set of songs for my 6-year-old daughter." It was like you could be a kid in a toy shop, in a sweet shop, in terms of what could I do with this. So it was like a massive wake up call, if you like. Whereas, we'd spent years, with the greatest of respect to people, saying, just think about the benefit you could use to apply AI in project management, and lots of people were inquisitive about that. But taking that into a commercial arrangement was a leap. It was like, oh yeah, very, very interesting. Anyway, back to my day job, as it
yeah,
were.
yeah. It's the real stuff, not the
The-
future that's 20 years down the road. Which I don't
the-
know what it felt like. I mean, it felt like for me before then the that sort of stuff was going to be the and literally I have an aspiration to write a novel, and some of the things that I was writing in a 40-year plus novel were things like um, automated note taking in meetings
yeah.
and transcription and action taking, which for me at the time was, and in fact, I'll show it off anyway. I've
Ah,
not got right. I've got I've got that there. Is the
yes.
You can probably see it. I don't know if you
Yeah.
can see that.
Yeah.
So that was a Chat GPT or Copilot. I can't remember which one.
Yeah.
Picture I asked them to do, plus with a little bit of editing on the back of it with a bit of blue. But that was 2 minutes to do that, and
Yeah.
that story included a future technology company. And in that future technology company, they had like an Alexa app, and that app would sit in meetings, take notes, and give you those notes and send them out to everyone. Make sure the actions are highlighted and done that. And then you kind of sit there now, and Microsoft Copilot's doing that sort of at
Well,
60%,
Russell,
70%
I
of
mean,
that my
you,
envisaged now.
You, let's face it, we're entering. I mean, people call it the next industrial revolution. I've always been a bit of a futurist and
Yeah,
sci-fi type buff. So when I was at LSE in 91, my dissertation was about virtual reality, and whether that is feasible. It's probably a whole new subject, if you like. But you talk about the team meetings. I remember Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Do you remember the fish that put in your ear that
Yeah,
did
yeah.
automatic? Yeah, exactly. Automatic translation so that you and I could speak in different languages and what came out was understandable. Well, that's starting to become real, and so I think in a way technology is starting to catch up with creativity. Whatever your thought was, and I'm a positive person, so I'm not into Armageddon or Mad Max. Who knows, but I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful that that opportunity of really helping humankind prevails badness. Now, who knows, especially with some of the tyrants that may or may not appear in the world at the moment. But it's almost like everything is becoming real, and you're talking about the book cover there and the team meetings. I think it's almost like any stone, if you think of the stone, it's going to get turned over shortly.
Yeah.
And it's not just that, it's the capability of bringing technology to market and the speed that you can bring it to market. I think that's kind of interesting. So the startup ecosystem that is moving so rapidly, and it's actually those big companies that can't necessarily keep up with this as
Yeah.
well. And again, so from that point of view, we are still at the foothills of this revolution, but you can see it. Every company, yeah, we're doing Copilot, we're experimenting with this because it's back to it's accessible, and they're using this type of stuff at home. But it's only just beginning, Nigel, in my view.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Thinking about the sort of from us as a career, so obviously you're a career project manager, you've done all the different planning and all that sort of stuff. And I know that when we had the session, people matter most was the conversation we had last year.
Yeah,
And three of the talks had AI as a large stream of the conversation in there. And that for the very right reasons, the fact that it's going to change our industry. It's going to change our profession, sorry, as project managers. It's going to change what we do, how we do it, and sometimes why we do stuff as well. But I suppose from your perspective, where do you see, I'd say, in the next 5 years,
yeah,
what do you think the project manager role how it would look different in your
yeah.
brain?
It's I would caveat it with what I said previously, which is, the big constraint there is how fast companies, adopt, as it were. And some will go a lot faster than others. Um, Anecdotally, I got to tell you, I sat on a talk the other day, which was an academic talk. I like to go on these talks occasionally to see what the theory is saying. And
Yeah.
there was a major university chap delivering a talk who had sponsorship by one of the world's biggest technology companies. I support Chelsea. They play in blue, if you get the idea of which company it might have been. Anyway, he had done some very interesting research where he'd looked at all of the control functions to do with project management. So scheduling, budgeting, procurement, resources, etc., etc. And what he'd done is he'd categorized the functions between the level of tacit data and absolute data. So by tacit data, how much human interaction, human interpretation was being taken account of. And he ended up concluding that these functions could be undertaken completely by AI, and these functions still needed a human intervention. And I can tell you that basically on the latter side, he'd ended up with, decision making, influencing, human communication. And on the other side, he was proposing that, subject to adoption, that every element of project management could be undertaken by AI. Now that is probably the extreme of what we're talking about. But and when we're talking about 5 years' time, yeah, I think that what we'll see is, especially this year with the advent of AI agents, and also the advent of the major software providers creating more AI-based solutions. So this morning I was looking at Microsoft Project, where, your point about the creation of the project plan, a few little variables, bosh, 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 there's the plan. So I think in the short term, some of the trends that we'll see will be about, you know, working out where the human intervention stops and starts, and within that, things like empathy, things like creativity will definitely be the domain of the human, whilst these systems start taking increasingly the amount of automation away from us. I think the other threads will be things like, we've been talking about it for years, but data silos, linking data from all elements of a project together. And by that, I mean from strategy through design, through delivery, even into operations. Can you imagine starting to link, the actual outcomes of projects with the project progress in its own right? So sustainability is probably a big operational output there that I think will start linking together. And I think by default, that will mean hopefully we're more managing at the risk level rather than the issue or the change control level. In other words, we're being more proactive rather than reactive, as it were. For me, what we'll see is more about the human at the center, more about linking all this data together, across the broader definition of a project, along with the thread of things like sustainability. More importantly, my biggest hope, Nige, is that actually that means we get more projects right first time. So when we put the budget together, we are not that 60% or 70% or 80% of projects are over budget. We actually get that stage of the project more correct. So sorry, that may have been a long answer, but there was quite a lot of threads in there, yeah?
Yeah, it was quite an open-ended question, wasn't it, really, to be fair. It was one of those ones that you could, it's kind of, yeah, that's not a 5-minute answer, yeah, a two-word answer on any of these things. And I think it's interesting because the thing that I have seen for many, many years, and as in when one of my silly books that I did there talking about lies, damn lies, and status reports, it kind of that where we get away from the fact that you've got that project manager writing a status report, and it's articulated in a way that is sometimes not entirely the whole truth and nothing but the truth scenario. It's kind of just a bit of, right, what I want to tell them this time, and you kind of move away where can we get to that point where there's an empirical nature to that data that goes on those reports that's automatically created, that isn't manipulated 10 times into 5 different spreadsheets in order to get to someone and getting that. I was chatting to a guy, Steve Rapton, earlier this month around some of the stuff that he's been doing, and how his whole thing was about being able to get from an app that you've got. If someone's doing some work, you can track what they're doing on there. It flows through all the way through all your program reporting through to your benefit realization, as you just talked about before
Yeah.
as well. And having those systems that do those things, because quite often there are bits of system that break out and do bits, and therefore then you have a PMO or a PM moving stuff from one place to another, and that means there's an influence you can put on those reporting. You haven't got that. I think I've heard it described as a golden thread all the way
Yeah,
through.
yeah,
Um, and and those things that you talked about there is I can see how that do it. The one thing that I find quite interesting is is the and it's one of the few things I get riled about actually, is when there are things quoted on LinkedIn around projects fail 70% of the time, 90% of the time, and I kind of I immediately say, what do you mean by fail?
yeah,
Now, because that's define fail, define succeed. Because if you are delivering to time, cost, and quality, that project can be an abject failure.
yeah,
Because if that time, cost, quality that you got given at the beginning and you worked out and you thought what you were going to do, that's fine if you did it perfectly. But what you deliver has no benefit to the organization. What's the point? Whether
yeah.
that be like
So,
countries, whether it be businesses, whatever,
yeah,
then it's how you make sure we're measuring the right thing and thinking about the right thing. Now, fair enough. If you say we're going to do this, getting within that is part of the story of success, but it isn't the whole story of success. So I suppose how do you
yeah.
see the and
So,
then maybe that's how Greyfly comes in. How do you see
well,
those things
yeah.
happening and how and improving in those?
Nigel, it's great. I'll come on to the success question. I was actually part of the PMI working party that's been redefining project success. So I'll come back onto that in one
Yeah,
second. But
absolutely.
just wanted to pick up on your point about data driven and data led. And I think that's a fantastic point. And apologies, I should have mentioned it more. That is the ideal that we're looking at facts. Now again, depending on I'm a social scientist. So what do you mean by fact, which sort of touches on your point as well. I think also for me, the point I'd like to make is that so we're in the world of project prediction. I can give you the most accurate prediction, in the world. You as a project sponsor can absolutely just ignore that and decide what you want to do. So for me, there's two angles there. There's one about reporting on the factual thing, both before and after the event, as it were. But then there's also this change management piece that is so important to sit along any technology innovation, any technology revolution as well. So that's the first point I was going to make. The second point, just going back to your point about project success. So I don't know whether your viewers have seen this new definition from PMI, but basically the example they always use, and there's lots of people that use this example, is the Sydney Opera House. So that particular project was massively over budget, massively delayed. But I don't know about you, Nige. I wouldn't mind jumping on a plane to Sydney to go and see it now. So what they've been redefining is almost what is a project in the first place, because the tail of that project back to benefits realization was many, many years after what we would traditionally call a project, the building element of it and the fit out element of it. So what they're pushing is a much longer duration, and the term that they're using there is about value. It was worth the effort and expense to get the value. Now, the other dimension there, as well as time, was, well, it depends on who you're asking as to whether it's a success or not. So the project manager who was responsible for that Sydney Opera House probably got kicked around the head 28 times by all sorts of people for being over budget. But if you then ask a member of the public or the person working at the operational site, it's a massive success. And what they found, the two most they did this massive survey, yeah, 17,000 people, yeah, and what they found was that the two biggest factors that led to this success of a project, this longer term success of a project, was one, measure it, yeah, and back to AI, the second thing was, and this is interesting, was make it sustainable. Now, it's sustainable in the broadest sense, yeah. So, good for people and planet and all that great stuff. And they were saying, look, if you start your project with those in mind, you're more likely to succeed. And of course, they're not throwing away time, cost, and scope for the actual, if I call it the original project period, but they're just
Yeah,
saying we need to start looking at the longer term. And then, sorry, I'll just finish off. Then you think, well, where can you apply AI in that type of guise? You can apply it
yeah.
at every stage, from the strategy, the idea stage, through to the delivery, through the design, through the delivery, through to the monitoring and the realization as well. So yeah, so hopefully that makes sense to me, mate.
It does, and it is, and I think it is a fascinating topic in itself, and hotly debated because maybe in other countries it's different, but the British media, the newspaper media, if you have a large government project that goes over budget, it's front page news, and people get hauled over the coals on it, and never. It's all about how much it's cost, and that money could be spent doing something else. Is always the
Yeah,
thing. I mean, that's always the thing that's trotted out with all of them, and it might be completely true on some of these. Some of these might be poorly managed, might be poorly allocated, might be poorly thought through. Some of them are just it's project delivery, and it's never straightforward. And actually, even though it might go over 20 million, which sounds like a big number, or 10 million or whatever, it's a big number, absolutely. But in the relative terms of what you're delivering, not necessarily. And in the relative terms of the value you're delivering, and that's where the value thing comes in, that benefits realization. But that end bit isn't newsworthy, is it? It isn't headline worthy going. They've increased it by £20 million, which means that we will get £10 million extra benefits. Forget the £10 million extra benefits. 20 million is the thing that gets quoted.
yeah.
There was
It's
a conversation. I know it was at the session we were at, and I remember Adam Bodison talking about the unexpected benefits of
Yeah.
projects. And he talked about the delivery of electricity through the channel
Yes.
between Europe and the UK, which is something I'd not heard of before. And I thought that's quite an interesting thing of do you think, and just made me think there, from a point of using AI, now we use AI to build plans, we predict what's going on, those sort of things. Do you think there's an opportunity where you'll be sitting there as a project manager going, right, we're building our benefits realization, we're building our benefits value of our project. And as maybe even as part of delivering through the project, that you're using AI to go, right, okay, can you identify opportunities of non-intended benefits of what we are implementing?
Yeah.
Could you see that? Something that just
Totally,
curious.
totally. I mean, even identifying the benefits and having more confidence in those benefits in the first place, and
Yeah.
also, things like it's a very mechanical exercise. If a project's slipping, what effect does that have on the benefits? Or, you think about, if I include this extra scope, what effect does that have on the benefits and the cost and all of that good stuff as well? So for me, this whole intelligence around project scoping, project delivery really lends itself to AI. And the challenge becomes, there's almost, how can we unlock all of that data, which, let's face it, we haven't configured or prepared for it to be accessible traditionally. So we might not have even documented, Nigel. It might be half documented, or in this person's head or that person's head, or those 10 people had different views, but we never put them together. So there's massive potential for AI in this, yeah. Even if it's pour all of those documents in one place and say, tell me the contradictions in these design documents. I was on a call the other day with an organisation who's done some absolutely unbelievable stuff about litigation, yeah, in the construction sector. Hot topic, yeah. costs
Yeah.
millions, if not hundreds of millions on certain projects. And all they were doing was pouring all of the data in a knowledge base. And by all of data, I mean project design documents, BIM documents, emails, Teams chatter. And they were basically saying, pull out contradictions, tell me what the hot topics are, prepare for this particular litigation, and prepare the reports. They were saving hundreds of thousands of pounds with litigation lawyers. Yeah, so it wasn't the end step. Yeah, they were still bringing the lawyers in at the end, but it was the preparation step. Very much so. Even back to your example right at the beginning. That first pass of preparing for that workshop, preparing for that litigation. What a fantastic opportunity! Now, you think about if you could then apply that same logic at the design stage. Now, wouldn't that be fantastic? And the
Yeah.
design, I mean, including the benefits piece as well. So yeah, the short answer to your question is yeah, I think there's huge benefits there. It was interesting you were talking about the government projects and I think I totally concur. The headline grabbers, the Daily Mails of the world will always jump on that. We actually did some analysis of last year's. It's called GMPP, so the government's major project portfolio, and I can tell you, yes, there were some big headline grabbers. HS2 probably being the most well known, but when you look under the cover, a lot of those projects are overspending significantly. Now, I know some of the people, and I know they're doing a fantastic job to try and address that. But it goes back to projects are not easy. Yeah, anybody that thinks it's not a profession, that thinks that you can just pop something in overnight, yeah, it is not an easy job to do. And that's why I love Adam Bodidson from the APM. He's always talking about making sure that we are a profession. Why aren't we at the same level as accountants? Why aren't we at the same level as lawyers? And I love that, and I think over time we will see that, as we get to this moment where people realize that everything we do are projects. Everything a company does is a project. Yeah. So for me, this I really chimes to you about the headline grabbers versus the benefits. But I do know those people are working really hard to address that using AI as well.
Cool. Do you want to just give me and the audience a little potted view of what, like, obviously Greyfly is your business and your
Yeah.
baby that you've started, and there's a load of benefit that you can deliver out to projects, and maybe some of the listeners don't necessarily have the influence. I don't know, maybe to come and grab the software from it, but some of the thinking behind it and the approaches in there, they may be able to apply that some of that. So, tell us, what is it? What is Greyfly? What does it do?
Okay. So we've been basically researching and development AI products. Our flagship product is called Intelligent Project Prediction. So hopefully, gives you an instant idea. It does what it says on the tin. We were really fortunate that in November we actually won Project of the Year for both innovation and technology at the APM Awards. So we're currently holders of the 2024 Project of the Year. It was absolutely life's greatest moment, Nige. Not quite as good as when I scored that goal in the semi-finals of the Under 12 Cup from outside the box, but it was up there. I was very happy man, as it were. So the core product, IPP, Intelligent Project Prediction, what it does is it ingests data from the host organization. And the first time you do it, you're trying to grab as much high quality historical project data. And we do that so that we can train the machine learning models, the algorithms, to be able to predict accurately. When we bring that data in, as well as doing a data maturity assessment, because we obviously want to work with the customer to improve the data quality back to generally the relationship between data maturity quality and prediction accuracy and project
Yeah.
success. Yeah, so there's a broad, accrued relationship. So we want to work with an organization to improve their data. When we bring it in the first time, what we do is we create what we call an exploratory data analysis about it. So those people in this world, it's like descriptive analytics. What happens? Why does it happen? So are your projects late? Are they early? Are they late? And what are the reasons behind that? Is it, I don't know, I'm based in Bournemouth. All projects in Bournemouth are always late, as opposed to projects in Birmingham, which are always early. So what are what we call the features associated
Yeah.
with that? And what that allows us to do is to set the KPIs around the portfolio that we are going to attempt to improve through the adoption of our systems. So the hardest bit is getting that data ready, training machine learning models, yeah, configuring the back end and how you're going to visualize that data as well. So we then take on a regular basis ingests of project progress. Yeah, we compare them to this morph of data using machine learning algorithms, and we say that's the most likely outcome of your project. Yeah. So that's the most likely budget. That's the most likely schedule. And we compare that to what's being reported so that you can then act upon it. Yeah. Now, what I've described there, I'm talking about live projects. But of course, if you know the patterns in the data, you can apply that to projects not yet started. So if you know projects out of Bournemouth are always late and you're proposing a project out of Bournemouth, then you know that there's a chance that that also may be late as well. Now, obviously, I'm giving a very basic example of one geographical feature there. There are more features associated with it. So that's our core product, if you like, is prediction about live and not yet started projects, and the why question as well. More recently, what we've done is said, well, if we look at this what and why, the third leg of that is, well, what can I do about it? Yeah. What's the point? It's like many years ago, they used to say, don't just give me the problems, give me the answers, give me the solutions as well. So we play into that. And as of today, the way we play into that is, first of all, we look at those features. So we will make a recommendation for every project as to how to bring it back to the budget. So if I go back to my basic example, this one, we're suggesting move it from Bournemouth to Birmingham because there'll be a saving. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
and of course, that it's data driven. Yeah. So there needs to be a piece of work outside of the system to check whether you can't just drop Bournemouth and move to Birmingham. Sometimes it's not that easy, but data driven. That's what your data's telling you. The other bit there is this, this challenge that you and I really know about, which is things like lessons learned and risks are shelfware. Yeah. So it's about unlocking that data and serving the right lessons to the right projects as early as possible in the life cycle. And to do that, we match through features, but then we also use Gen AI to start summarizing, objectifying both lessons and mitigations, as it were. So that's what we're doing today. Hopefully that makes sense
Yeah.
to you, Nige, and to your listeners, obviously. So,
Yeah.
um,
It'd probably make more sense to them than me, but yeah. Uh,
what
um,
happened? Why? What can I do about it?
yeah, and I think it's really interesting that you touched on lessons learned there, and it's something that for years in every good quality project, you do your lessons learned at the end of the session. You go or end of phase, you'll do a lessons learned, and Agile's started to get that retrospective, so you're doing it more frequently on those sort of projects, which is really good, and it's great for those projects because you'll learn that lesson and you'll adjust it in your next phase or your next sprint. Problem I find is that when you start a project, you don't there isn't a button to press to go, where's all the data for all these projects that are like this one to
Exactly.
give me. The person who knows that is the people who've done it before.
Yeah.
And if you're lucky enough to have had And Jenny, who has worked on this kind of project in every instance that we've done it and knows it upside down, inside out, but then they go off sick, you're up shit creek.
Yeah. Uh,
Whereas if you've captured that lessons learned, captured those variations that you're talking about, and
yeah.
you can press, I'd love to be able to press that button going, in my organization, when I'm doing a project like this, with these parameters, Bournemouth, Birmingham, all these different ones,
Yeah.
what is a typical outcome? And what were the stumbling blocks, even if it didn't give me an outcome, if it said, oh, think about these 5 stumbling blocks
Yeah.
because these are what the lessons learned, and you go, all right, let's make sure that we don't have uh, this person on the thing, or we
Yeah.
don't use this supplier, we don't, those
Yeah.
sort of things you just don't know if you don't know.
Well, that's exactly what we're playing into there. It's exactly what we're playing to. I remember when back in the day when I ran projects, that what I used to do is over my experience, yeah, I had a couple of things. I had a vanilla work breakdown structure and a vanilla risk log, so that I could accelerate
Yeah,
creating the work breakdown structure or the risk of. It's the same principle in my mind. Yeah, I'm just doing it in a in a digital format to be able to get there a lot quicker. I still need to validate those lessons. I still need to validate those risks. As of today, I do as an individual. Yeah. So again, for me, it's about unlocking that knowledge, and that could have huge benefits for an organization to fast track getting to whatever the design challenge is or the whatever the discussion is. So for me, that's the point there. So everything you described, that's exactly where we're playing there.
brilliant. It's kind of it's plays to my um it's, I wouldn't say I'm a detailed person, but I do like data.
Yeah.
And I do like to be able to have empirical data and be able to. It's my training as an accountant for 10 years, and that's
Yeah.
probably where being able to go, I know what that number is, I know why that does that, or here's something I need to understand. Those are the things. What the value is that exception reporting. Because one of the things I do find is, and I have done for many years, is a lot of reporting, a lot of analysis, and a lot of things you get through the project management profession, the finance profession, is a lot of data
Yeah.
and not a lot of exception data.
Yeah.
And it's the exceptions that are the things that you need to focus your time on. But
Yeah.
being able to find those exceptions means you've got to do lots of analysis yourself and or go through it or know or experience. And then that leaves you in that position where you miss things.
Yeah.
Whereas if we're able to pull out those exceptions, pull out the I suppose that the question around causality and correlation,
Yes.
that's again that's the hallucination thing you're talking about. Whoever it was Adam again talking about the line on people's necks, isn't it, on photos and that. And that causality and correlation kind of conversation, being able to see if you're trying to solve every one of those, but seeing the ones that are important, the ones that are going to impact you, and you can go, actually, oh no, it's all right. Just happens to be that all of our projects in Bournemouth are worse than the ones in Birmingham, and actually we've realised it isn't anything to do with that. It's to do with the fact that we've got this person from Bournemouth working on them, and it's not the geographic location; it's the
It's,
individual
yeah.
performance basis.
It, it, it,
But understanding that underneath, and I just
it,
loading the data up's a crazy thing, isn't it?
Yeah, there's a couple of things there you're saying that is probably worth chatting about. What one is, depth, if you like. Yeah, so we know the deeper that you get into a project, the more unique that project is. Because it's got that person, because it's got that time of the day, because it's, so I think one of the risks in this, or one of the challenges is that yeah, projects are unique. Yeah. But at a certain level, they tend not to be. And I remember being taught by a chap, my first ever big job when I left university, I got a job consulting at a telco actually, and the chap there was a real hard-nosed Yorkshire man who delivered big projects and direct as you like, and he always taught me about to succeed in projects, a majority of the work was about creating the right environment for success and that work on the 80-20 rule, Lloyd, because if you get 80%, if you get your big risks under control, the little ones will just bounce off and you'll manage them at action level rather than significant level. So, and I know these are words and translating that, where is that bar of data and information is not necessarily easy. But for me, that's been part of the guided analysis that we did. And that was the second part. So for me, it goes back to this human technology dimension, which is guided analysis. So in our solutions, we have this principle called guided analysis. In other words, we try and lead you to look at the right challenge. And your example of Bournemouth is really good there because we're saying, actually, you've got a problem in Bournemouth. And according to your data, these are the attributes of those projects where you're creating challenge in Bournemouth. What you now need to do is go and investigate. Yeah.
Yeah.
And by the way, Bournemouth, when you look across your whole portfolio, is costing you this much. Therefore, focus on Bournemouth, not focus on this other type of projects over
Yeah.
here. Yeah. But, go back to our 5-year window. In the short term, the human needs to go and get that. They need to go and investigate further. They need to go and understand that as well. And then you're back into, where does bias stop and start? So, yeah, levels plus guided analysis. That's, we're not quite there. The computer's not quite taking over every element of what we do yet, Nigel.
Yeah, I can see that. One final question for me, I suppose. Obviously, you're going into lots of different organisations and looking at adopting these things, and I can guess what the answer is. But what do you see as the hardest challenge for organisations to be able to adopt these kind of top technologies and your technology and that sort of stuff?
Yeah. So,
I'm
so
assuming there are other competitors that are trying to do the same sort of thing, so it's kind of
yeah,
a
well,
yeah,
every day more competitors, it's like, I
yeah,
don't know what's going on there. But anyway, that's a different debate. For me, I like to categorize them onto both the
sure,
technical barriers and then the human barriers. So on the technical barriers, because we're talking about machine learning, it's about the data and making sure that you've got the sufficient high quality data to train machine learning models. Now, the challenge there is, depending on the type of organization, the legacy data may not exist. Yeah, so if you're building a new city in the Middle East or something, and you've never built that city anywhere else in the Middle East, where's your training data, as it were? And again, you can unpack that and mitigate that, but part of the challenge is the historical data, and along with that point about did we actually configure that historical data well in the first place? So once you've got that data and worked out what data you're going to use, actually, and you may need to integrate various data sources and all of that sort of stuff. So there's definitely a sort of technology thread through this, but obviously as an organization we're becoming smarter and smarter in the way that you can do that in an accelerated fashion, so that from the point of the first moment to the accurate prediction, that's part of our everyday lives that we live to try and make quicker. The second part of the constraint is actually the harder one, I think, which is the human side. Yeah. So you get from the all of that typical stakeholder management analysis stuff is as important, so you'll get people that are high influences with high impact that either believe or don't believe. Yeah, so you need to create a change management or an adoption plan. Yeah, so you need, back to our example earlier, that I can give you the best prediction but the exec can ignore it and go, look, I've got my pet project over here, as it were. So those adoption plans and addressing resistance to change, or even how you train out the use of systems and all of that sort of stuff, especially when people are increasingly nervous about, is AI going to take my job, all of that stuff as well. So you
it's similar
need,
technologies to resistance, isn't it?
well,
All new technology, there's always going to be. It has. over the
But
hundreds of years.
since you and I did projects, it's just that it's coming to the fore more in this particular AI world, as it were. So for me, again, I'm not teaching you to suck eggs here, but it often gets forgotten about, in the same way it does on a project, and depending on who you're talking to, is change management a subset of projects? Is it even or whatever? All I'm saying is you must have an adoption work stream as part of any of this AI and project management process. So yeah.
Brilliant. Well, I'm noticing we're coming up on knocking on an hour's chat here, and I've taken us topics all over the place as ever. Um, if was there anything that coming onto the show that you had in your back of your mind, thought, oh, I want to have a chat about that, and then we've not got anywhere near it, and you want to just share that,
Well,
or share a nugget of information for people to think about?
yeah, well, first of all, I must say I didn't realise you'd written the book Lies, Damn Lies and Status Reporting. I love that. I love that, and because obviously I was thinking you were going to say and statistics, but
Yeah,
but yeah, I love that, and there was a whole thought around that we could have. For me, I guess the point that I get asked all of the time is, as a project manager, what should I be doing, to think about this? And for me, there's sort of different lenses there. I would hope that as a project manager, you are naturally inquisitive around this subject. It's hard to ignore it. I mean, we're being hammered by all the professional bodies. I don't know about you, obviously my LinkedIn is all about AI, whether it's around projects or generally. So I would encourage anybody to be inquisitive. And the second part of that is to build up your knowledge, and whether that is looking for the appropriate accreditation or training courses. I mean, LinkedIn does a load of free stuff, YouTube, there's lots of, whether it's following certain companies or certain individuals to see what they're talking about, or being part of networking groups, all of that stuff I would encourage you to do. The other thing I would encourage you to do is make sure that your organization is having an active conversation as to what they're planning to do about AI and project management. What is their AI readiness plan? What is their transformation plan as well? So for me, the one thing I just wanted to get across there was to encourage anybody who's listening, who wants to be relevant in the future, to get on this AI and project management bike. Just the last thing, I appreciate we're all so damn busy doing our projects. Yeah. So this is a bit like I'm sort of saying training courses, yeah, where we always put them off unless the company forces us to do it. So you probably have to find the time and prioritize it above others. The last thing there is, don't get lost in a Gen AI hole as well. AI is a lot bigger than just Gen AI.
yeah. You can get to that point where you end up. I started it as right. What pictures can I generate of what using Discord or Gen AI or any of those? So yeah, so I kind of and I sit there thinking, why am I bothering with that? I don't need to do that. But it's quite interesting to learn the scale of of complexity of its capability, and therefore, from my point of view, if it can do, one of the ones I had shocked me was I pumped a bit of audio into an audio mimic of me, and then did text to speech, and it mimicked me, and I was like, yeah, I can only
Is that
just tell it's
scary?
not me.
Is that scary or is that
Yeah, well,
good? I don't know.
it's impressive, it's scary, and now I imagine it's even better if I put the video in. I know it can do the video even better. Do you know what I mean? It's just, yeah, it's amazing.
It'd probably give us better answers than you and I have had, Nige, as well, So, so
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I might try and do that. I'll see if I can pump this into it and get it to it right. Can you do another interview on this with me and Lloyd?
Do you know what? I'd love that.
On a completely different topic.
I'd love that. Get these guys talking about, I don't know, football is obviously one of my
Yeah.
passions, but
Salmon fishing.
maybe not obviously, you know, I would love that. And for me, you know, that goes back to that accessibility point as
Yeah.
well. But you know, again, this is just my view is that, you know, we as professional project managers, yeah, it's very easy to go down in rabbit holes. Before you know it, you're the AI expert on this platform, that you know, create
Yeah.
requirements, create use cases, create. No. Hold on. You know, our role as project management is
Yeah.
about facilitating and bringing people together to drive the desired design and outcomes of projects. Whereas, you know, some it's almost like, you know, I don't know everything about Microsoft Word. There's a certain level that I know which gets me by. You know, if I want somebody to make the best looking report, then you know I'd use an expert in that. So there's that sort of danger, if you like, that we end up being jack of all trades, master of
Yeah.
none. So for me, it's a bit like, you know, what's your company doing? Because that's where you should be taking your steer from as well. But you as an individual, make sure you're upskilling yourself. Yeah.
That's brilliant advice. Thank you so much for your time, Lloyd. If people want to get in touch, find out more about Genfly AI, Greyfly.AI.
Greyfly.AI, yeah.
Yeah, mixed up everything there. Um, what's the best thing to do
So, so,
to get
so,
on?
so there's a couple of things. You know, I'm a big LinkedIn user, so you'll find me on LinkedIn. You'll find Greyfly on LinkedIn. Start there. There's obviously a website. There's calls to, you know, you can get in touch that way. But LinkedIn is probably you know, the preferred um, vehicle or channel, as it were. There's lots of great stuff on our website as well. You know, lots of downloads, lots of recordings, including Ricardo Vargas and others as well. So there's some interesting stuff. So back to being that inquisitive. Yeah. So LinkedIn, I would suggest, Nigel.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much for giving me so much time. Yeah, a lot of food for thought for people, maybe open people's eyes to the next phase. And I think the advice of it's coming, get ready, get in there and get and understand it is really, really good.
Yeah.
But you have a fantastic rest of your day and a wonderful weekend.
Thank you, Nigel. Thank you for having me.
That's my pleasure. Cheers, mate. So I have a number of sponsors, affiliate links in the way that it's set up that have kindly allowed me to share their services. Really, the first one is Mike Clayton, and Mike runs online PM courses, and it is a great resource for getting those fundamentals of project management trained, reasonably priced, and Mike presents it in an accessible and clear manner. You can check out some of his videos on his YouTube channel and kind of give you a view of where they are. But the code for that, if you go to nigelcreaser.com/online PM courses, all one word, lowercase, that'll redirect you to it. There's very different levels that you can buy. You can buy individual courses, you can buy pathways as well, if you like. And I get a kickback off those. Mike kindly shares me that. So if you do jump on and use it, I hope you find it really useful. I think he has money back guarantees and things like that as well. So there's very limited risk on that. So jump on that, and that again, it's nigelcreaser.com/online PM courses, and enjoy.